Hey, what's up you guys? In this video we're going to work on this coffee thermos in 3ds Max and Substance Painter, so please like and subscribe to our channel. Alright, so right now we're going to work on this thermos in 3ds Max and Substance Painter. So we're going to start off with a cylinder, obviously, and we're going to build our way into creating a final coffee thermos. Alright, so the first thing we need to take care of, which is creating the overall silhouette or the body of this model. And to do this, we're going to use the edge extrusion method, which is a very good way of creating lots of polygons with multiple details and creating some corners and edges with full control. So you're going to keep holding shift all the time in order to extrude these edges. And it's going to be very easy to do once you know the basics of this method. You're going to be able to create anything you want. So first of all, as you can see here, I'm creating the body of this model here, and it's going to take a few minutes, but it's going to be fast. So right now we're going to try to create the inner side. After we complete the outer side of this thermos, we're going to go to the inner side, keep holding shift all the time in order to perform this. Probably the inner side is going to be a little bit interesting because we don't know exactly, I personally don't know exactly how this looks because I didn't gather some reference images for the inner side, but it doesn't matter that much because it's not going to be seen, probably it's not going to be seen anyways. Alright, so we're gonna go a little bit deeper and try to get to the bottom of this inner side, and we're gonna start to bring these polygons closer before we collapse them into one single point. Alright, so now we're going to copy these sets of polygons because we're going to use them for creating the cap. And this is going to be fairly easy and fairly straightforward, so it's not going to be that big of a problem. Alright, as you can see here, I'm trying to extrude this part, and we're going to try to add as many details as possible. Alright, keep holding shift and move it down. Probably, as you can see here, the thickness of this piece is not optimal. It's not looking as we want it to look, and we probably need to change it and manipulate it a little bit. Alright, so also this side is going to be probably it's not going to be seen from the outer perspective, so it doesn't really matter how this is going to look, but we're going to make it anyways. So as you can see, to see actually through the wireframe, we're gonna have to use F3 from the keyboard and use the edge extrusion method techniques that we talked about previously. Alright, for now, you can see I detached also a set of polygons, as you can see here. And because we want to create a floating geometry all around this cap, this coffee thermos cap, and you can see that I'm chamfering these edges here because I want to extrude some of them, So we're going to select them all using ring tool, the ring tool on top of the Edible Poly modifier. And we're going to start by adding also, as you can see here, I'm trying to add a circle or a set of polygons around in order to be able to trim or delete some of the polygons that you can see here. So delete from the keyboard in order to get rid of those because we don't necessarily need them. Alright, probably we're gonna try to change some of the aspects of the size from the top. You can change the color or the material of this model here using the material editor M from the keyboard. Also, you can change whatever you want because sometimes the proportions are kind of are not going to be something you like from the first attempt, so you're going to be able to change that if you want to. Okay, here I'm using the swift loop in order to add few edges, and we're gonna chamfer them as you can see here. This is not gonna be hard to do, but we're gonna need few details here. So keep holding Control and select polygon to convert edge selection to poly selection. Then we're gonna extrude here using the local normal because we want the extrusion to be even all around the edges. We're going to do the same thing here from below because, and we're going to do it kind of, we're going to do the inverse because we need this time, we need to push it to the inside, not to the outside. And this time I'm going to use the scale tool, right click on the scale tool and change the percentage, lower it down, and you're going to get something that looks like this. Alright, so as you can see here, I just detached a set of polygons once again because we want it for creating something else, and this one is going to be used to create the cup. So usually a coffee thermos is going to have a cup with it, so these are going to be used for this is not going to be a coffee thermos that you're going to use inside. This is the one that you're going to take when you're going to have to actually travel or be outside for a long period of time. So it's going to have a cup with it that you're going to use. And in order to create this cup, we're going to have to scale down the upper side and make it a little bit make it look like a little bit more like a cup or mug or whatever. We're not trying to make it look, sorry for that, I just hit my mic. we're not gonna make it look like something ridiculous or kind of looking like something unnatural. So we're gonna try to make it um, look acceptable from to a certain extent. All right, as you can see here, we were trying to add a few details, and it's going to be very important because these details are going to be baked into the high poly or into the low poly inside Substance Painter, and I personally like adding these floating geometry and these details that we usually bake into the low poly because it gives the impression that the low poly is going to be complicated, even though it's going to be fairly low poly. So the inner side of the cup is going to be interesting because, as you can see, we're going to have to also add some details from the inside. Alright, when we are done, we're gonna close this border using the collapse tool. Alright, it seems like it's a little bit bigger than necessary, so probably we're gonna change its size or its proportions anyways. Also, there is a little detail that we're gonna have to add in the bottom here. Alright, we are using the swift loop in order to create few edges here, and we're gonna do this because we're gonna create a logo or trademark in this area, so we're gonna have to use the polygons that we have on the body or the thermos in order to kind of align it perfectly on top of that surface. All right, so when we detach it, we're gonna have to go to the modify panel and look for the freeform deformation model modifier, and we're gonna try to skew it a little bit and modify its edges. So we're gonna modify it around the corners. So we're gonna go with 4x4x4. This is gonna allow us to have more control. So we're gonna select the control vertices and scale them down a little bit in order to be able to control it a little bit. Alright, so adding the shell modifier is going to allow us to give this piece a little bit of thickness, and we're going to be able to delete the backside of this piece here because it's not going to be seen anyways. Okay, as you can see here, we are trying to create the layers for the high poly and the low poly. And this is very important because from now on, we're gonna try to take this model into separate ways, for one for the high poly and one for the low poly. So we're gonna create a copy, and we're gonna call it the low poly. Okay, as you can see here, we are working on the high poly version, and as you can see, I'm adding some support edges. We've done this so many times in the past, so this should not be something that we need to explain. So we're gonna try to support all the edges all in the necessary areas, and we're gonna keep doing this until we get something that we are satisfied with when we apply the Turbo Smooth modifier. All right, as you can see here, when we apply the Turbo Smooth modifier, we're gonna be able to find some mistakes we made, and probably some edges that we added accidentally. So we're gonna be a little bit careful because we don't want to mess things up. For this piece here is gonna be something similar. We don't have to worry too much about these details because they are gonna the outcome of this process is obvious every time. we do use these tools. All right, in these areas we can use the Swift loop, or we can simply use selecting. We can select all the edges that are gonna be supported, and we're gonna use the connect tool in order to get something accurate and something quick. All right, after we are done with the process of creating the support edges, we're gonna go back to the low poly layer or model, and we're gonna start removing all the edges and all the polygons that are really not necessary, because they're going to be replaced using by baking the details from the high poly into this low poly model. And there are a few things we can remove here. These aren't going to be obvious because they're going to have kind of these areas here where we have these extrusions, and where we have some height differences in surfaces. These are going to be removed because, as I said, they're going to be replaced. But don't take it too far, because kind of the normal map is something great, and it can perform a lot of kind of amazing stuff, but it is not a miracle, so don't rely on it too much, because sometimes you're gonna find yourself in trouble if you remove too much. So I don't suggest that you kind of take it overboard. Don't, as they say, don't push your life too far. All right, it seems like here we've done some mistakes, and we committed some mistakes, so we're gonna have to fix them. Compare it to the low poly, to the high poly, and kind of try to match them together and get a nice overview and make sure that everything is compatible. Then you're gonna go back and fix or connect the vertices, and you're gonna be ready to go and work on the rest of the surfaces that you need to make them look like they are part of the low poly model. Also, when we make some mistakes, there are going to be some problems that you need to work with. But for the most part, it's going to be okay. So as you can see here, I'm trying to reduce the amount of polygons from the inner side, because it's not going to be seen anyways, and keeping it as high poly as the outer side probably is going to be waste of poly count. So we're gonna get rid of those. So control backspace, by the way, to remove the edges. Control backspace. If you use backspace alone, you're gonna leave vertices behind. But using control backspace, you're gonna remove the vertices and the edges in the same time. Also here we have a lot of edges and polygons that we don't really need, so we're gonna get rid of those. Alright, so we're gonna remove everything, and we're gonna bridge these together. Select two borders, then bridge. From the inner side, we also have a lot of edges that we don't really need. Alright, so here we started using actually the UV unwrapping in order to UV unwrapping modifier in order to start UV unwrapping this model here. And for this model, it's gonna be pretty straightforward, because we don't have a lot of things we can do or things we can worry about. So we're gonna try to use the box mapping method, and after everything is scattered on the 0 to 1 area, we're gonna stitch all the elements together. So Shift S from the keyboard, or just right click, then so stay selected. All right, when we make sure that everything here is taken care of, we're gonna push into the to a corner because we need to start working on something else. All right, so we're gonna jump to the other piece. This one here is gonna be also simple. We don't have to think about it too much. Just apply. Also here, as you can see, we forgot to actually I forgot to work on the aspect of removing everything because we need to prepare it to be a low poly, and then we're gonna apply the UV unwrapping modifier, and we're gonna do our thing. All right, so for this trademark piece here or logo piece, is going to be very straightforward, so we don't have to do too much. Just try to apply the unwrapping tool that you need, and organize everything and put them in the right place. All right, so for the body of the bottle or this thermos, there are some things we need to be careful when we are doing. So it seems like this is not going to be straightforward, so we're going to have to break it down a little bit, and we're going to actually try to cut this piece here into separate areas. So we're gonna select few edges, and then we're gonna convert these edges to seams, and this will determine the number of areas we're gonna have. Also, we're gonna cut this one here into or cut it open, because we're gonna use a tool that is gonna unfold it, or make it a little bit easy to work with using these tools. So from the inner side also, we have to do the same thing as you've seen. Alright, so as you can see here, this is gonna be easier, and it's gonna make it help us to get this thing done easily. So kind of it's gonna spare us the hassle of trying to stitch all the pieces or kind of work on it individually and polygon by polygon, which is not gonna be easy to do anyways. Also here it seems like it seems like from the inner side is going to be the same thing as the outer side, so similar things there. And when we're done, we're going to rescale all the elements and put them inside the UV template area. So Shift S from the keyboard to stitch select or stitch all these elements together, or just right click and stitch selected to be exact. And it seems like these pieces also need to be relaxed a little bit. Alright, so when we are done with all the pieces, we're going to have to convert them to editable poly, and we're going to attach all the pieces together. Because right now we're going to have to start working on the UV template. So after we attach everything together, as you can see, we can see all the pieces that we worked on in one place, and we can actually start to kind of push them automatically inside the UV to 1 space, but 0 to 1 space, I should say. But this is not going to be optimal. This is not going to be efficient. It's not going to be organized and kind of looking appropriate anyway. So we're going to have to do it manually, and this is what we usually do because automatic tools, I think, are not going to be able to cut it when it comes to these things. So for the most part, we're gonna start to push the bigger or the biggest pieces inside first, and after that, we are going to put in or push inside the 0 to 1 space the smaller pieces because they are easier to control and they are flexible in their movements and the way they are placed. All right, so if we see that the space or the size of these UV shells is a little bit more, is a little bit smaller, we are gonna select everything and make it a little bit bigger because we usually want to use all the space we have in our UV template. Because texture resolution matters, as you know. If we don't use all the space, we are kind of losing some resolution and kind of detail on our model. So we're gonna try to use all the space we have, since it's gonna be the size is gonna be the same, and we're gonna try to use all of it. All right, so for now we're going to work on the naming process. So this is very important because in Substance Painter, the backend is not going to be done correctly unless we name our pieces in the low poly and the low poly accordingly. So Substance Painter this way will be able to know which piece is going to be picked on top of which. Okay, so using the naming tool, we're going to have two things. We're going to have the name itself and the suffix. So the suffix I usually use is _LP for the low poly and _HP for the high poly. It doesn't matter actually what suffix you use, but what matters the most is consistency. When it comes to this model, we don't have lots of pieces, so it's going to be this process here is going to be very fast. Alright, so when we're done with the process of naming our pieces, we're going to make sure that the names are correct and we are not missing any pieces. As you can see here, we almost missed that. Also, when you're done, you're going to have to save your files, your low poly and the high poly. Just select and go to Files, Export Selected, and we're going to import them here inside Substance Painter. So import the low poly model that we worked on. As you can see, this is the one. And we're going to go to Textures, Set Settings. We're going to open the baking dialog and bring the high poly, change some parameters as you can see here for the baking purposes. We're going to change the suffixes also because this is the one we used for our case. And when we see the test bake, when we see that the test bakes kind of is giving us good results, we're going to jump to the real bake. Change some parameters as you can see here. For me and for what I do on this channel, when working on these tutorials, I usually stick with the same settings because they give some good, kind of generally speaking, good results. And as you can see here, this is a nice bake here we were able to get. So for now, we're gonna create some folders because this is gonna be able to allow us to be better organized, and it's gonna allow us to have more control over the textures and the materials. So this is gonna be the aluminum material. We're going to drop it here in that folder. We're going to use the mask, and we're going to use the polygon fail tool, and we're going to start selecting all the areas that are going to be affected by this material. And this is important. So we're going to go to the F1 from the keyboard to bring the two viewports, the 2D and the 3D viewport. And we're going to start deselecting the areas that we don't want them to be kind of affected by this material. So the inner side is going to be plastic. And as you can see here, I'm deselecting. To deselect a material, you're gonna have to push that in the polygon fill. You have a kind of spectrum. You're gonna make it black, and if you wanted to create a material or make it appear, you're gonna use the white to the right. All right, so it seems also that this area here is going to be also the same material, so we're going to push it to the right because we want to create a new material affecting these polygons here. And as you can see, the result is quite interesting. Also, I just selected some other polygons, and for now we're going to add a plastic smart material. As you can see, we're going to change the color a little bit to something greenish, something that looks like this. And of course, we're going to start adding a black mask. Go to polygon fill, select by elements, and we're going to select the cap first. Also, the inner side of this cap is going to be plastic. So what we're going to do is from the 2D viewport or F3, if you want to look at it individually, you're going to hit F3 from the keyboard, and we're going to select the polygons that are going to be plastic. Alright, so this is going to be a new folder. This is basically, I think, is going to be for the body of this thermos. So we're going to choose a nice material. So we're going to use this steel tank material. Of course, we're going to modify it a little bit. There is some dust and some rust and some other stuff we need to manipulate and change a little bit because by default we're not going to be using it exactly as it is. Alright, so as you can see here, there is some rust on the edges. We want to control that a little bit. We need to increase or decrease the amount of rust using the texture controllers here. So, what's great about Substance Painter is everything is procedural, meaning that everything is controlled using parameters and kind of values and numbers. You don't have to paint everything and kind of control everything in the canvas. You control from the parameters, which is really great. And this technology is pushing the boundaries of creativity to a new level because you don't have to waste hours painting scratches and kind of detailed stuff that can be generated using procedural parameters, as you can see here. Also, the rust, we don't want to push it too far because it's not going to be good for it's not, I think it's not going to be it's not going to be looking that nice anyways. Alright, so now for the logo of this thermos. I think we're gonna use certain steel material, and we're gonna make sure it's gonna look nice. So probably this is not the one. So let's find something else. Alright, so this looks cleaner and better. Also, we need to add a fill layer because we're going to have to use an alpha that I created myself using a certain image I found, and I modified a little bit. And as you can see here, this is we're going to use it. We're going to try to actually use it as it is. We're not going to use it as a stencil, so we're going to use it from the brush directly. Because the resolution of this piece here is too high, we don't have to worry about the details too much. So this is going to be the last thing we're going to do here when it comes to this creating this thermos. I hope it was useful and you learned a few things. And if you want to get your files, your textures, and kind of 3ds Subsys Painter files and 3ds Max models, please visit Patreon. You're gonna find everything there depending on what tier you are using. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.